good morning, everyone. Happy Friday to you. Welcome to the Permanent Commission on the Status of Racial, Indigenous, and Maine Tribal Populations. Today is Friday, August 7th. Our meeting today will go from 11 to 12:30 p.m. And our sole purpose is to walk through some updated data.
It's 11 o'clock.
My computer's telling me it's right on time. We'll go through some updated data of the bills that we've been working on for the last several weeks, and hopefully leave today's meeting with some decisions to then continue our work and continue to move it forward so that we can produce a final document for the legislature to consider in regards to bills that will help us address racial disparities here in the state of Maine. We're going to start, make sure everybody has an agenda. And as we have done, we'll start with some introductions and welcome from the Permanent Commission members. If you could all just pop up and introduce yourself. And I'll start. Rachel Talbot-Ross, I'm the chair of the Permanent Commission.
Hey everybody, this is Ian. I'm a member of the commission. I work at Mano & Mano, and I'm here filling the seat for an immigrant organization. Thank you.
Good morning, I'm Molly and Dana, Penobscot Nation Tribal Ambassador.
Hi, I'm Isaiah Reed. I'm representing youth populations on the commission.
Garrett Stewart. I represent the labor rights on the commission. Thank you.
Morning, Joby Doyolo. I'm a senior policy advocate with Maine Equal Justice, and I represent a statewide organization that has policy expertise on public benefits.
Morning, everyone. I'm Dee Clark, and my chair is representing Housing Insecurities.
Hi, I'm James Mile, policy analyst at the Maine Center for Economic Policy. I'm representing an organization with economic policy experience.
Madam Chair, I think you were speaking, but we're on mute.
Sorry, thank you very much, Katie. I noticed that there's a phone number, and I'm not sure if that's a Permanent Commission member.
I think that's me, the 5061, Isaiah.
Okay, just checking. Thank you, Isaiah. That looks like it. Are there any other Permanent Commission members? Thank you. I know we have a number of folks who had excused absences for today. I'd like to ask our staff if they would be able to introduce themselves. Katie, Reggie.
Hi, everyone. I am Katie Walsh. I'm the Communications Director in the House Democratic Office, and I'm providing some staff support for this project of the Permanent Commission.
I'm Reggie Parson, Legislative Aid and Policy Analyst in the Speaker's Office, and I'm also providing staff support for this effort.
Thank you both. And then we have staff from the Department of Labor, and we've got our premier guest, the guest like no other, Cheryl Kelly. So Cheryl and Cheryl could introduce themselves.
Sure. I'm Cheryl Davis, and I am with the State Workforce Board, Maine Department of Labor, and I am providing staff support for this commission.
Hi, everyone. Carol Kelly. I'm a consultant in the Portland area. I help groups with strategic planning, and I'm happy to share some of these tools that can provide guidance for quantitative results, data that you may use in your final discussions and deliberations. Happy to be here. Thank you again.
Thank you both. Thank you all. Did we miss anyone for introductions? looks like we're all set. So we will get started. And as you can see on the agenda, just want to ask if there are any corrections or revisions that anyone would like to make at this time. Seeing none, we will go right into the presentation on the data, the updated priority setting results. And I will turn the meeting over to Carol, and with help from Reggie and Katie, if you'd like, we'll get started.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I will definitely be looking for input from Reggie and Katie when we get to the bill status. I wanted to just give you a quick update on what you're seeing today versus what was shared in the past meetings, with Wednesday particularly. So we've produced a let's call it a hybrid version, a hybrid chart. It has a lot of the elements of 3 different charts mushed into one and formatted mostly for easy reading. What you've got here is a chart that is, and this is the one that's labeled, it's actually a table, a spreadsheet, and it's labeled 52 high-ranking bills and bill status. And so in the first column, you'll see the LD number. In the second column, this is the per your direction, the rankings that the permanent commission only, so not including input from legislators, that the permanent commission only rankings using a quadrant break of 13. And so that quadrant break, again, is that place where we sort of draw that guidance line on ease and impact. And so everything that appears in the grid in the upper right quadrant would be tier 1. The elements or the LDs that appear in the upper left and lower right are tier 2. And the LDs that appear in the lower left, which are the lowest ease and lowest impact rankings that you've given it, are tier 3. And so on this column, you can see also color-coded, green tier 1, yellow tier 2, and white tier 3. Those tiers change as the quadrant break is moved, but the pattern stays the same. And so in previous charts you've received, we've provided what it looks like when you change the quadrant break location. And so you can always refer back to those. But this is a snapshot of what it looks like if you only use permanent commission rankings, and then you include so that's 37 bills, 24 tier 1 and 13 tier 2. Sorry, did I say 27? 37 bills. And then the other 15 are pulled from those other tables that you received on Tuesday or Wednesday, which basically say, if you add in the legislators' rankings, these other 15 will rise up in ease and impact rankings. So you have decided to cull this down to this short list of 52 from where you started at 454 and then got down to 154. In this particular exercise of culling, you're now down to about 52, which is not, of course, I think the chair will share how additional bills can be added back in, but that's basically what you're down to. And so then Reggie and Katie overlaid the status of each of these bills. And that's what you see in the remainder of the table. And I'll let those guys describe the details around that. The only other thing I want to point out is that I did I produced a new scatter graph. And so the one that you were sent, and I'm not going to switch to screen sharing because I think we'll lose Garrett when I do it. But the one that I sent, or that was sent with your packet, is now a representation of the pattern created by just the permanent commission rankings. So the new scatter graph does not include legislators in the pattern that is produced. And the scatter graph I sent you shows a quadrant break of 13.5. It's a nice way to show what it looks like when you move those lines, those breaks further out and cull down the list of tier 1s. So I'll stop there and turn it to Reggie or Katie for detail on the bill status.
Yes, thank you, Carol. So what we were hearing from everyone was that you wanted a little little bit of clarity around which bills in this immediate session might have an easier way through the legislature without losing sight of the fact that all of these bills are important to the commission, and bills and topics that you do want to suggest the legislature continue. There had been some talk about just immediately eliminating out bills that had received an ought not to pass from committee. There actually were no bills on this immediate list that were a strict ought not to pass and thus wouldn't be going to the legislature. So what we did instead was we organized the bills based on which bills, this is slightly subjective, but which bills seem most likely to ease their way through based on the committee report they received. So the bills at the top are all the bills that received a unanimous ought to pass. They actually, in this case, are all amended, but still there was agreement across the committee, followed by bills that had still ought to pass, but divided reports, then moving into bills that were, and so on. So the further you go down the list, the further you shift. That's potentially an indication that it would have a tougher time when being viewed by the full legislature. So as you look at these, as you share them with constituencies, you could make your own decisions about which bills you wanted to focus on more with some of that context. So that's how we chose to try to adhere to that. What bills really have some shot in the immediate session request that you all had. Reggie, is there anything else you'd like to add on the sheet?
The sheet, no, I know that the Judiciary Committee yesterday wrapped up its work, and I didn't have a chance to update the spreadsheet based on that. But from what I've been reading just anecdotally in the newspaper, that LD 2094 was a bill that came out of committee. I don't believe it was reported out as of yet, but I know that they took a vote on it. And so, but other than that, that's kind of where things stand with these bills. And I just hope that it's more clear today than it was on Wednesday when we last talked. But more than happy to field any questions you may have.
Well, thank you both. Reggie, the only other bill on this list that says no vote would be 2118. 2118 was voted on yesterday by Judiciary, and the other is 1907 will never come out of committee. I think 680 you had indicated to us the other day, Reggie, the Down East, funding the Down East.
That was 608. Yep.
Oh, 608.
Yep. Yeah, that bill never came out of committee and in criminal justice. So
from this list, we would take off 1907, which is the Tribal Law and Order Act bill.
Okay.
And yeah.
Okay.
So I have two questions. So 608, are you saying basically it's dead in the water? It's not gonna.
Yeah. It.
Okay.
I think I tried to get in contact with you yesterday to hopefully fill some of those questions, but yeah, it's pretty much dead in committee.
Okay.
So.
Now my question was that to fund the existing prison or to build a new prison? That's what.
Yep. So the information from what I got looks like they're building a pre-release kind of, not corrections per se, but it's like building a Washington County pre-release center where the legislature funded 15 positions. And I think DOC was trying to find existing property that was in Washington County for that. So to answer, it's kind of, yes, they're building a new prison, but I don't think it will resemble what Down East, originally was. So it's like a pre-release center.
Okay. And my other question is, looking at this graph, does this mean that LD 900 is also dead in the water? So I see it on the lower right.
LD 900.
to extend the rights to employees under the Maine labor laws?
Let me see.
900 on this list, Garrett, is tier 1.
Okay.
Yep.
So to clarify, the graph is based on the data and the rankings of the permanent commission. It is the Excel sheet that we have sorted based on what their committee reports were. So the graph from Carol doesn't indicate where it is in committee process.
Okay.
And so what I would suggest to move forward, if you all have, at the bottom of the Excel spreadsheet, it says master, which it gives us the breakdown that we can always refer to. And then it says, there's a tab that says bill status, right at the lower, right at the end of the Excel. I'm going to suggest that we work off of the bill status because it gives us all the additional notes. It gives us the title to some degree, and we can see quite clearly the 52 that are green, yellow, and white, right? And as they've explained, white would be adding in the legislators' ranking of priority bills in amongst our top 52. Is everyone following along? Any questions at all? Okay, great. So from this list, we've already taken off 1907. I think what we should probably decide on, because at the last meeting, remember, we weren't going to look at this from that quadrant quantitative analysis component. We weren't going to move forward in that manner. We are now going to move forward. Anyone can correct me if I'm wrong. We are now going to move forward just by kind of following what James had offered at the last meeting, by starting to take some things off this list. And there could be just we could approach it a couple of different ways, but this is now the list that we're working off of to try to reduce to a very, I'm going to say, there's no number. Just want to make sure that there's absolutely no magic number. There is a range that we're hoping to get to, and in terms of one other quick thought, in terms of 1907 and 608, I just want to give a tiny bit of voice to this. 1907 is on our list as tier 1, and as James said in the final report, there may be some bills that we mention that didn't move forward for a particular reason, but it would be really important for this commission to have weighed in. 1907 is one of those bills that gives concurrent jurisdiction to the tribes in the state to prosecute class C crimes, but it's a very, very important bill on sovereignty. So, and likewise, Garrett had some issues with 608 being a really critical labor bill. So you want to, are there any bills that anyone sees on this list that you want the commission to consider just taking right off so that we don't go further into any discussion? Do you want to keep the tier 3 bills? Chime in. Okay, so we'll keep the tier 3 bills. Any bill that anyone wants to just take right off the list? Okay, I'm not seeing any particular feelings on them. Oh, I noticed that the Vice Chief joined us. Vice Chief Newell, thank you for being here. I just want to give you a quick opportunity to introduce yourself and say the constituency that you represent.
Yes, thank you, Rachel. Vice Chief Newell, Passamaquoddy Tribe. I'm the Vice Chief here.
Thank you, Vice Chief. Thank you very much. So seeing that there are no bills that we want to just immediately take from this list, we will need to start at the beginning, unless someone has a better process. And what I would suggest is if the bill that we're talking about was part of your subcommittee process, so you either chaired it or you were part of the deliberations or you reported on the bill, help the permanent commission out and just remind us what your discussions were in the subcommittee level. If you have any information on these bills at all, otherwise we're going to rely on Reggie and Katie to help us kind of figure out these bills in terms of any amendments to the bills and any updated status on the bills. That would be very helpful. Everybody all set? Okay. So we start at the very beginning at LD 44. This was a tier 2 bill, as you can all see. Not a divided report, so it has been amended. Do we know a little bit about this bill? Anyone have it in their subcommittee? James?
Yeah, so this is in my subcommittee and subcommittee 4. I'm a little mixed on it, I think. I think so. The basic thrust of the bill is it's supposed to be protecting. Well, it does a couple of things. The thing that I think is most problematic is that it creates a new Class C crime for reckless endangerment of a child, and so I'm not sure exactly how I feel about adding to the criminal code, when I think in general our inclination is towards reducing the number of crimes and criminal offenses. It does mitigate some of or changes the language around the crime of gross sexual assault against a minor to reduce the chances of children being prosecuted for that if they're engaged in activities with other children, which would reduce juvenile prosecutions. And then part of it that's also seen as important for our purposes is that it recognizes the sovereignty of tribal courts around domestic violence convictions for the purposes of prohibition of owning firearms. So if you have a conviction from a tribal court, it's treated the same as any other state court there. So those are kind of the 3 big pieces of that bill, I think. But as I say, I'm a little hesitant on it, even though it came out of the committee, partly because it includes that additional creation of an additional crime.
Comments? Reactions? Anything? Hearing none, I'll add my own. I'm with James. I'm not in support of. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to put words in your mouth, James. I'm not interested in adding a new crime. And while I do think that this is a worthwhile bill, I don't think it meets the test for being included on our list. Because remember, these are all, they can be great bills, could be a great bill, but we have a different criteria for it remaining on in our deliberations. And I do not believe that this meets that test. James, am I putting words in your mouth, or are you?
I think that's sort of the way I'm inclined, the way I would lean anyway. So
I agree with that statement, that it's just not does not meet our support or falls in line with our agenda.
Anyone else? I'm not seeing anything. And so, Cheryl, if you're taking minutes, could you please help us reflect? I know Reggie and Katie are as well, but reflect that LD 44 would not move on at this point. Thank you. We're now at 115, LD 115. And that is a tier 3 bill. So that did not show up on our list, the PC list. Anyone have this in their committee and act to appropriate funds? This is a funding bill for home visiting services to provide child development, education, and skills development for new parents. It does have a $4 million price tag on it, the first fiscal, and $3 million on the second. This is a funding bill. This is appropriate.
I think this might have been in my commission. I'm not 100% sure, my subcommittee. Yeah, this is for extra funding for home visiting services. I mean, I think there is an argument to be made that these services are particularly valuable for low income folks and people of color who are helping, they have big impacts on children's development later on in life. I actually think I have in my notes here that I think there was an amendment filed to this that greatly reduced the fiscal note down to $500,000 a year instead of $4 million. I could be mistaken, but I think that's what the amendment says. No, I see it as $1 million here, actually. Sorry. Maybe they changed it again.
Yeah, the bill, so $1 million to stabilize the workforce for bringing salaries of home visitors in line with comparable positions and reducing the waiting list for home visit services. So absolutely essential. This would be, Garrett, something within you may be interested in as a workforce bill, and reducing home services, visiting services, child development. It's a great bill. I don't know what James, maybe you do, maybe you know, Joby, what the, how we would be able to articulate a explicit impact. This is for new parents.
Yeah, I can. I don't know. I don't have that off the top of my head. I feel like I have read things that talk generally about the particular needs for these services in communities of color. I can try and do some digging around and get back to the commission on that if it would be helpful if we want to put it on hold until we know more, and try and see if we can get information on the program in Maine too.
And I'm looking at there were 15 folks who testified. So we can look at some of that testimony as well. But I want to make sure that everybody has use. I'm not sure if everyone knows that if you go on Maine legislature, the state of Maine legislature's website, you should be, and we can put it in the chat right now, you can literally, as we're talking about these bills, just put in the LD number and bring up the title. It'll bring up the fiscal note. It'll bring up, there's a section called Select Paper or LD. It's a little, you see on the screen when you get to the website, it's the 129th. You can just easily put that LD number in, and it will bring up it'll bring up everything that you need for this discussion. So it's a useful tool when we don't know the depths of all of these bills. Anyone want to comment on 115? Okay, so, Carol, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is not on 115 specifically, though. I think now, having run through 2 of these bills, I'm finding myself toggling back to the master spreadsheet. And I just want to flag that may help folks as you're also thinking about this, because it really reveals the power, the ease and impact momentum, not just from permanent commission members, but from, when legislators are brought into the mix. And so if you go back to that master sheet, you can see that LD 44 really only appears in the permanent commission list at the very, smallest quadrant break. And that is also true for 115. It only appears in the very smallest quadrant break shown here. So both of these are examples of, they really didn't rise to the top in either cohort, whereas the bills that have more green boxes essentially do tend to rise up to the top in both. So I don't know if for me, it's about the pattern. And so I just don't know if that would be helpful, but I just wanted to flag it. I was finding myself going back and forth, so it might be helpful to folks.
That's very helpful. That is extremely helpful. And now, thank you for doing that, because now I would say, I'm not sure, James, if you should spend your time on it. You certainly can. What do other folks think? I would move this off our list, but Garrett, James.
You know, if it doesn't have a chance, then we shouldn't waste our time. I mean, you know, that's the bottom line. You know.
Well, it in terms of it got a ought to pass as amended. So it has a strong vote out of the committee, but James, you're willing to take another look at it, or if that's the case, we'll move on and allow you to do that.
Yeah, I think it's worth digging in a little bit. I don't mind doing that before next meeting.
All right, we're now at LD 182, which is to amend the bail code. As Carol said, looking at the pattern, this was a tier 1 for us. It's got tier 1 for the full committee. 182 on bail.
Madam Chair.
Yes, please.
I just wanted to point out, I remembered from the briefing on this that Representative Tom Harnett mentioned that the bill had been substantially amended so that it no longer even deals with bail. And so I actually followed up with Representative Harnett because I wanted to learn more. And this now has to do with the financial screening process for defendants who can't afford an attorney. And part of the financial screening determines, my understanding is that whether or not they will be given an attorney through the Maine Commission on Indigent Legal Services. And what this bill does is that it moves that financial screening from the Maine Commission on Indigent Legal Services to the judiciary branch. And while this is an important change that needs to happen according to the Sixth Amendment Center, which is this national organization that reviewed Maine's very problematic public defense system, I think ultimately it's a good change and I would support it. I'm not 100% sure if we did want to limit the number of bills as a commission, if we decide it's more impactful to have fewer bills, I'm not sure this would rise to the level. But otherwise it's a good bill. And I just wanted to flag mainly that it doesn't have anything to do with bail.
You wanted to flag what? I'm sorry, you trailed off a little bit, Joby.
I said I mainly wanted to flag that it doesn't have anything to do with bail reform.
Okay, gotcha. So at this time, I think the way for us to move forward is just say, because we're just trying to get some bills off. This isn't a final vote. So if we can just get a couple people to say, yay, just keep it on there for the time being, or no, that's all we need at this stage is a yay, let's keep it on and we'll keep thinking about it, or no. So do I have a yay? You guys want to keep it on for the time being and continue to think about it, or should we just take it right off?
I agree to keep it on for further deliberation.
Okay, so that's a yes. Again, this isn't a final determination. So 399, if anyone had this one in their subcommittee, an act to align wages to direct care workers for persons with intellectual disabilities or autism with a minimum wage. This is 399, and we can see the pattern. Tier 2 for the full committee. This did rise to tier 1 for us. Anyone have any knowledge? Go ahead.
Oh, I believe that was in my committee, and I can speak on behalf of Commissioner Lewis that he was very fond of this bill, since many of the people working in the position who would be getting this wage boost are BIPOC, and that this would be very impactful for them. So we both agreed that we'd like to see this stay in for further consideration.
Everybody okay with moving that on? We ranked it fairly high. Yeah. Okay, it moves on. Thank you. The next bill is 428. This is if you see on the full, it's nowhere. This was just a tier 2 for us. another wage bill, funding bill, an act to establish wage and employment parity between adult and child protective services, caseworkers, and DHHS. I mean, I think, you know, yeah.
I mean, I would say when I was ranking this bill in our priority setting, I didn't really understand the racial disparity impact. I don't know if others have more, have a better understanding.
But it's again, Garrett, this is a, you know, a labor, this is a wage and employment bill for caseworkers.
Yeah, I'm listening. Yeah.
So I don't know. Again, we've got it at tier 2 only, and it didn't show up on the for the full committee.
Right. Well.
Anyone need to keep it? At some point, we'll have to look at this pattern of funding bills, right, and wage parity bills, because we just kept one on $3.99. You know, they are different workforces, but they're still frontline. Yeah. So at some point, we're going to have to reconcile whether we're for these bills because they move a particular workforce forward or we're not. But to parse out whether it's, you know, adult and child, you know, to parse it out across the spectrum of services probably doesn't, you know, it can be a filter, but we're gonna have to make a decision about these funding bills.
I would just say I wasn't thinking of it as a like a workers' rights issue, and when I do think of it like that, I see it more. So.
Yeah. Okay. So 493. Yes. Oh, no, I mean 428. Yes. Keep it on
I
the
beg your
list.
pardon. I didn't, what was decided on the one we just talked about? 428?
No, we're deciding now. 428. My apologies. You want to keep it on for further consideration, just so that we're pretty consistent with these types of funding bills. I'm not seeing anybody who has a real strong flavor. I'm going to keep it on just so that we talk about them all together.
Yeah, I was going to suggest that if we could keep it on.
Yeah, so 428. 493, an act to provide lung cancer counseling and screening for Maine care patients. Did anyone discuss this in their work group? It is a tier 1 for tier 2 for Ledge.
Madam Chair, that was also not subcommittee that I was on. I think that since this is Reverend Lewis and I thought that with this being a Maine care bill, and since that affects I guess, I don't know what the word I should use. I lost my words for it, but I think this would be impactful, especially since it's providing more health care and affordable health care for BIPOC people, and I would support this.
Ditto, Isaiah.
Anyone against putting it forward? Because we'll just put it on and keep moving. I do not see anyone, so 493 will move on. 573, an act to extend time limits for placing land and trust status under the Maine Indian Claims Settlement. The status of this bill is 573. Tier 1 for us, no report. I'm not sure what happened to this bill. Ambassador Dana, do you recall, or Vice Chief Sewell? Newell, I can't. Reggie?
Yeah, I don't think we ever took it up, or you ever took it up in judiciary, because this would have been talked about in the larger discussion on 2094. I think that's where we're at with this.
Yeah, I don't think this is this won't come out of committee, because all of the land trust things are already been debated and other bills, LD 2094 namely. Yeah. So 573 can come off our list. It's not an active bill any longer. I am going
Albert
next.
Ross.
Yeah.
So 493 is that left on?
Yes, it is.
It is. Okay, thank you.
Sure. So I am, we are now at, I hope I'm doing this right, Carol. I'm going off the list from the snapshot. I'm going through the bills listed in order of the snapshot, Carol. Are you guys fine with that? You guys are set with that? Okay. So the next bill is 633. I'm not sure we need to discuss it much unless you want to. It's tier 2 for both the full committee and the permanent. 633. An act to create a kinship care navigator program within DHHS. I'm going to say no.
Yeah, I mean, I'm inclined to agree only because I think it sounds like potentially a good bill that will help some folks, but I don't see that it has a compelling racial impact case to be made. I mean, it probably would have some small effect perhaps, but I don't know what the numbers are for folks who would use that program. And it just seems like it's only moving the needle very slightly.
Anyone feel strongly about it or talked about it in their committee? I have to go between screens. I'm not seeing anyone who wants to. This so this is a no. We're going to take this off the list. Yep, 633. Everyone good? Okay. Moving on, we're at 647. An act to attract, educate, and retain new state residents to strengthen workforce. 647 is a tier 2, and it didn't show up at all for the permanent commission. I'm guessing it's a no. Everyone okay?
I was actually inclined to support this on the basis that it's focused on the new Mainer population and potentially has an impact in workforce development and that sort of thing. So I think, to me, it feels like one of the few bills that is particularly targeted at a population of color, if not all of them. So I was more inclined to keep this than some of the others, actually.
I wonder why it didn't get. I mean, nobody. It's tier 2, and the permanent commission didn't rank it at all. So this is
Madam Chair.
Yes, please.
I believe I ranked this highly as well, just because I was thinking of as Jane said, immigrant populations and supporting them, but I was not aware, or I don't remember if the language was targeted at people of color or if it was anything like that. But I do think that since we do have more people moving into the state who are with immigrant status, that this may be impactful.
Yeah, it has a $1.5 million price tag on it that gets reduced over time. But it is definitely, while the language should probably change on it, I would say, because the bill is definitely focused on what one would call a new Mainer population or an immigrant population. Although it says new state residents, that's new state residents could be somebody who's white moving across, but that's not what the bill does. I'm saying the language should change. Anyway, I'm inclined. I don't know why it's showing up like this, but anyone?
I would prefer that this bill was for present residents. You know, let's come up with let's attract folks and have this educational something to help people find worthy jobs. I think we have a lot of people here that could go into the workforce if they had the correct training and stability to help them cross that threshold. That's why I wasn't interested in it.
Yeah, I think the word attract might you know, be giving people some pause, because we, like Dee said, we do have a lot of new Mainers here already. And I think we're all for strengthening that community and getting them resources. But the idea of like attracting new residents, yeah, that language is weird.
Yeah, and I think that might, I mean, if I may, I think that might just be part of the title rhetoric. From the language in the bill. It's designed to help new Mainers who are already living here and focusing on like English language proficiency, transferring credentials that they might already have. So as far as I can tell, there isn't money budgeted for like an outreach campaign. It's going to be serving people who are here, but that's only my perspective.
No, you're right. I mean, the title is what's tripping, you know, us up, because it's really working through the adult education centers to establish welcome centers and fully try to get funding for that education and training development at that level for folks who are already residing in the state. It is a workforce bill, it is a labor bill, and it is part of a absolutely growing population of folks. So I'm inclined to keep it. Sounds like James, you are too.
I am too.
And Joby. So we'll move 647 on for further consideration. Oh, is that okay? Okay. Unless someone says no, we'll keep moving. Just checking in on time. We're doing well. We are now at 680, which did not get ranked at all by our friends in the legislature. I don't believe, so this is to clarify the intent of the Federal Maine Indian Claims Settlement Act of 1980 to ensure a federal principle of inherent tribal sovereignty. 680, I think, had the same, it's a tier 1, but it had the same fate as 573. Is that right, Ambassador Dana and Vice Chief Newell?
That's my understanding, yeah. And like this bill, I would love to see someone bring this back up in another session, because I think there's still a need for it. But I think right now we've talked it to death with the other bills. Vice Chief Newell, I don't know if you want to weigh in. That's my take.
Ambassador Dana, thank you for your expertise. I'm relying on that. Thank you.
Yeah, so this is definitely part of 2094. So we can take 680 off our list. And remember, so 573, 680, those two bills that never made it, you know, out of committee will join that other list with 1907 and 608, right? We're keeping a list of those bills we still want to make a comment on to show that their importance, but they're not up for a vote. They won't make it. 759 was tier 1 for the full committee. It's not showing up on permanent commission. An act to increase efficiency in the enforcement of the Maine Human Rights Act. This was in my committee. It's a funding bill. It's trying to add personnel and some technology to the Maine Human Rights Commission so that they can do more. Maine Human Rights Commission enforces the Maine Human Rights Act, which is to look at discrimination against the communities we are focused on, both in this process and as a permanent commission in general.
Well, I remember scoring that higher. I don't know how it didn't make it, but it didn't make it on ours, but it did on the legislative.
Anyone want to put yes?
Mine is yes, unless someone who knows more about the bill.
I say yes.
Okay. We're going to keep moving. 776. 776 tier 1. I don't even think we need to discuss it. It's tier 1 for everybody. And this is unless somebody wants to talk about criminal history records, you know, this is a sealing records bill that took a a law that had sunsetted, and it brought it forward. Class E crimes was the sunsetted bill to seal records on by petition for certain crimes. It does exempt all crimes against the person, family, household, sexual assault, any of those crimes are exempted out of this bill. But it does expand it beyond Class E now to certain crimes in Class D. I can go on if you want, it's my bill, but it rank ties.
A good bill.
Not advocate, but it is tier 1 across the board. So does anyone not want to see it move forward? Take a quick look. Nope. Okay, so 776 moves forward. Jump right in here, Reggie or Katie, Carol, anyone who has a thought about these bills. We're at 803. And, if we're not filtering them the way that we should, also let me know. So 803 was tier 2 for legislators, and it didn't make our list. An act to create 4 regional mental health receiving centers. This bill has been amended quite a bit since its original form. And it's a 3, I wanted to say, I'm just looking at the fiscal note, if somebody knows it. Yeah, I thought it was 3 million. It's a $4 million price tag. What it does is it's really trying to decriminalize mental health by establishing not brick and mortar regional centers, but receiving centers. It is part of a wave of reform going across the country, again, to give folks the help that they need and keep them out of the criminal legal system. So we didn't rank it tier 2, 803. And
I would support keeping this one. Yeah, I like this one. I think sometimes in this ranking, maybe the ease score, takes into it because it is hard to find money for things. It is hard to find people sometimes. So I think sometimes these may be really good bills, but we didn't rank them as highly because we were thinking realistically about money and stuff. That the way when I was looking at it, I had those thoughts. So, but I would support this one going through.
I would too. Thank you for that up, Ambassador. There is, this requires financial and human resources in a tight economy. So that's probably why it landed this way. I would support moving it forward. Anyone object to moving it forward? Yeah, it's part of a decriminalization reform. Okay, we are moving to 836, which didn't make our list. And it is a tier 2 for the legislature. It's an act to expand Maine school-based health centers. And this has a $600,000 price tag. 15 new school-based health centers need funding. Anyone talk about this in their committee?
Yeah, that was our bill. I'm not sure if you were about to say something, Garrett, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. No.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that was our bill. I mean, I think the benefit of having school-based health centers was pretty clear to us. So, we felt like it was a pretty important tool to have that would help reduce some health disparities for people that don't have access to insurance or anything like that. It's just a lot simpler than trying to get students to get care from somewhere else if they can just get it right from their school.
I'd be inclined to keep it. I think it falls in the same place that Ambassador Dana was talking about just recently. 836. Anyone object? Not seeing any. So
this isn't an objection per se, but I would be interested in thinking about, I don't know, I think 15 centers was what was in the original bill, and I think they took that language out and changed it just to a $600,000 appropriation. So I'd be interested to know like what that actually translates to in numbers. I suspect it's much lower than 15 because that would be really cheap to be able to get like $40,000 per center. So my question sort of related to that, and this could just be a note in the report or something, would just be knowing what the priorities would be for establishing those centers, because depending on which schools have priority for those, it's going to make a big difference, you know. I know some schools already have those health centers, but like, you know, a school in Lewiston or Portland, or, you know, it is going to have a much bigger impact on racial disparities than the one that's in a predominantly white community, you know, so.
Great. So let's note that, Cheryl, for the minutes, a question on 836 that James has around, and maybe Reggie, that's something you can look into as well as if this still applies to 15.
Yeah.
If this was amended, because $600,000 isn't buying too much.
Yep, I can check into that.
Thank you.
Yeah, I also add something in.
Please.
To that. I was just gonna, I haven't put words in your mouth too, but I mentioned, I think you're touching on I guess like a more, like where they're geographically located. As I mentioned, like if it's all in Aroostook County or Washington County, it's not going to be as significant of an impact as you mentioned, Lewiston or Southern Maine.
Yeah. Okay, checking in on time. It's about 12 o'clock, so we have another half hour. Everyone doing well? Keep going? Okay, great. We're on LD 900, an act to expand the rights of public employees under the Maine labor laws. Did anyone speak to this? It's tier 1 for us, tier 2 for legislators.
I like to see that stay.
Okay. Anyone object? Seeing none, we will.
If anybody objects, I can do some more research on that if needed.
I don't believe so, but thank you, Garrett.
Thank you.
We're now at 9:20. It was tier 1 for the full committee, and it doesn't look like it made our list. An act to establish a fund to support local fruits and vegetables purchasing. Anyone talk about this in their committee?
I saw this.
Oh,
go ahead.
This is. Oh, sorry.
I'm not sure what this bill's about.
Well, so I believe it was in my subcommittee and number 4. If I remember, bill would effectively, it would subsidize sort of purchases of fresh fruit and vegetable in the SNAP program, so people who are in the food stamp program, where your healthy nutrition for low-income folks who are using that program is that, you know, with a limited budget of pre-processed food in terms of calories, and so, you know, fresh fruit and vegetables just improve the ability to get that by subsidizing them. So
that even if you didn't have SNAP, you could still buy fruits.
Well,
or is it if you have SNAP, they lower the price?
Yeah, exactly. I think it's I think the idea is if you're in the SNAP program, then you kind of get a discount when you're buying fresh, less than the sticker price, essentially.
So that seems.
And yeah, that is my part.
Yeah, it seems like a good bill to keep. Anyone want to toss it at this point? Seeing none, great. We will move on to 954, which I'm grateful to see it got all the greens, but it is not a bill. It joins the other tribal bills that were consumed in LD 2094. Is that correct, Ambassador Dana, Vice Chief Newell? Okay, so 954 will go on other list that we're keeping of important bills. We're at 1012, which is an act to provide stable funding and support for childcare providers. It's tier 1 for both groups. Does anyone want to talk about it more?
I did just want to mention that what this bill is trying to do would provide an opportunity for the Department of Health and Human Services to provide targeted funding for specific communities, including if they wanted communities of color, but it doesn't specify that in the bill, which I think would be a good amendment.
Folks want to keep and make a suggestion to amend it in the ways Joby just mentioned? Everyone okay with that? Oh,
I like that idea, Miss, but I didn't even know that we could request amending something to make it more targeted towards people of color. So cool. Thanks for modeling that, Joby.
Well, I think that maybe in our report, we could just add that information, whether or not the legislature could actually act on it. I'm not sure that is possible.
Well, it looks like 1012 was ought to pass as amended in committee. You know, there's possibilities. We can always make that suggestion. There may be a number of bills that actually fall into that category by the time we're finished. And I've got to apologize. I didn't see, Bruce, that you had joined the meeting until now. My sincere apologies. Just for the record, you want to introduce yourself and the constituency that you represent?
Sure. Actually, I just joined, so you didn't miss anything. I hopped in probably about a minute and a half ago. So yeah, Bruce King, and I represent impacted communities. And yeah, so I don't know what you guys have already gone over. If someone wouldn't mind throwing it in the chat, that'd be great. And yeah, I'm here to participate from here on out.
Absolutely, thank you. And I can certainly give you a call right after, immediately after the meeting as well, Bruce, and bring you up to speed. So 1012, thank you. 1012 stays, it looks like, and based on the for the minutes, Cheryl, that show that this may need an amendment on it. We are now at 1043, which is a tier 1 for both. So I'm not sure how much we want to spend on it. An act to establish universal public preschool programs. Anyone talk about it in their subcommittee? I'm guessing it doesn't have an explicit target or strategy, but universal preschool generally helps out our targeted communities. Anyone disagree with it, want to talk about it? Otherwise, are we all set to move on? Yes? Yes? Okay. 1043 is a yes. 1050 isn't, the title has been changed. It was tier 1 across the board for us, tier 2 for legislators. This makes mandatory African-American history with an emphasis on Maine's African-American history and history of genocide in K through 12 schools. Anyone want to talk about it? Otherwise, we'll, yes?
I think we should keep it on.
Thank you. Anyone object? Not hearing an objection. We are now at 1134. An act to set aside funds from federal block grants for certain communities. This is tier 1 all across the board. Do we need to talk about it at all? Anyone object? Okay. So that makes it 1221. An act to allow deductions for prison sentences for rehabilitation. That bill has been amended. It's tier 1 all the way across, but the bill now is focused on restorative justice and ask for the Department of Corrections to establish an adult restorative practice within adult correctional facilities with the help of restorative justice practitioners. This bill in its original form will come back in the 130th. It needed a lot of work because the only person in the state that can actually reduce a sentence, as you probably know constitutionally, would be the governor. So this bill goes after what we call good time. it's too complicated to go into right now. But nonetheless, right now it's about restorative practice so that we can decrease the punitive ways in which people who are affected are disciplined and inside. It's probably more
Rachel,
than
that sounds like a totally different framework. Am I right in understanding that? Okay.
it is.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, but you said if it's going to return in the next, okay, gotcha.
Yeah, the good time bill, we have embedded in, I think this bill or some other criminal justice bill, I can't remember, but we've asked the Attorney General to establish a work group on good time and earned time. They are different in order to maintain the constitutionality of it, but we need to do more to reward and incentivize rehabilitative activities for folks who are incarcerated. We're not doing enough to incentivize it or recognize it. So anyway, I'm sorry to go on.
No, that's great. Thank you for that background. And if there's any way that I personally, whether it's within or outside of the commission, I would really like to be able to put in some input on that.
Absolutely. Yep, there are weekly meetings.
Great.
So 1221 goes in, is that right? I don't want to, yep, no objections. We're on to 1376, tier 1, only for legislators. It did not rise to level for us. I don't know anything about this. So this is amend the rules to ensure physical restraints, that seclusion policies are followed. It is let's see. I don't know what it did in committee. Reggie, do you know anything about this bill, Katie?
No, not in depth. From what I see, it looks like it is the divider report, and the majority went with ought to pass as amended. And the minority voting to not pass the bill at all.
Up to you all. What do you want to get? I mean, this speaks to school discipline, right? And for, I'm inclined to keep it just because it is trying to prohibit, it's trying to amend the rules. So, I mean, I do think it does falls within categories of children of color who are absolutely disproportionately, restrained, disproportionately disciplined, disproportionately medicated, disproportionately, all of that strain, all of the punitive ways that take place. So I don't know enough about it to talk more specifically. Anyone else? James, please.
I would like to weigh in. Oh,
yeah.
Sorry.
Well, I'll just say from reading the text online, it does say that it requires, so it would give us some data, comprehensive data on sort of disparities in this use of tactics in Maine, which
that's great. So 1376, anyone object to keeping it on the list based on that description James just gave us? Okay.
I'd like to say I'd love to keep it on the list. I would like a little bit more data because I know that, I don't know, I'm getting a little bit of tension there between the idea that there's more medicated individuals, but I also know that at the same time there's far fewer individuals who are getting screened properly, and people of color really aren't getting the diagnoses in the same way. So there's a tension there that I'm trying to resolve in my mind. So I'd like to go into it a little deeper is all.
We will make sure that the notes reflect that. Thank you, Bruce. Thank you for articulating that. Thank you very, very much. 1392 is an act to establish a formal tribal consultation process with the state. That bill was amended just yesterday to include pieces of 2094. That bill will look at taxation I hope I'm not getting this mixed up with 2118, which is the gaming bill. But 1392 will pulls out 3 of the recommendations from the Tribal State Task Force report on taxation, criminal jurisdiction, and land acquisition. And the judiciary worked on it quite a bit yesterday. The amendment was done in consultation with the tribes attorneys, Wabanaki tribes attorney. They've written this amendment and supported the amendment. So I'm not, it ranked tier 1. Ambassador Dana, Vice Chief, do you want to add anything? Making sure that I've got the right, I believe the gaming bill's in 2118, but.
Yeah, I think, excuse me, Ambassador Dana, but yeah, I think the consultation bill, the consultation effort was agreed to be separated from 2094 and continues with that route.
Yeah, so this bill was those things that we took out of 2094 and added to the consultation bill. Yeah, you're right, Vice Chief. And yeah, I think that description was perfect, so.
This is definitely a sovereignty bill. Seeing any objections? No objections. I will say thank God. I might be in the wrong commission if that was the case. 1403. An act to amend the general assistance laws governing reimbursement. It was tier 1 across the board. I'm not sure we need to talk about this much with its obvious application. Anyone want to talk about it or take it out of our pile? Great.
I don't need to object to it. I'll just say it was in my committee, and I think just in case folks don't have the background on it, I think the 2 things that are really important is it will affect communities that have very high general assistance reimbursement needs, and those are often service centers like Portland and Lewiston, where the majority of the recipients are asylum seekers and people, awaiting immigration determinations. And those are majority people of color in Maine. It also has an important provision that, as I understand it, opens the general assistance like reimbursement from the state up to the tribal community for the first time, which seems to be very important too.
So that was 1403. Everyone was okay with it. Yep. 1404, provide services and funds to prevent homelessness. I'm not sure whose committee this was in, but it got a tier 2 from both the full committee and permanent commission. Does anyone have information on this? James or Joby, actually. Do you know about this 1404?
I'm afraid I don't remember. It is a bill that I looked at a long time ago. Let me put up.
500,000 temporary housing assistance program. Yeah, it seems, I'm not sure why the ranking was the way it did, unless there's something about it. Reggie, do you know anything about this? It seems like we would definitely bring it forth. Dee, do you know anything about it?
I don't, but when I think of preventing homelessness and supports, I think of maybe rental assistance. I think of people who have a hard time maintaining housing because they don't present well and having supports. But I'm not reading anything here either as I'm looking. I think all bills that prevent homelessness would be good bills.
Yeah.
This is ringing a bell now. I think it was going to call for a committee to come together and look at requesting a waiver so that Medicaid funds could be used for support services for housing. However, I believe that committee has already formed and is meeting. So I would be happy to learn more. I think actually my boss is on that committee, so I can learn more about what the relevance of this bill would be in relation to the work that's already happening. Would that be helpful?
Yeah.
So we can keep it on for now.
Madam Chair,
Please.
may I add something? I was also looking at this in the lens of with the pandemic causing extra stress on this sort of possibility, especially since we see that across country and especially in Maine that BIPOC communities are hit hardest. I think this would be important in that light as well to put forth.
Anyone else? We'll just move on. So yes for right now. Great. We're at 14:17. We're at 12, almost 12:20. So we'll stop in 5 minutes. 14:17 is an act to expand access to Head Start to assist opioid affected and other at-risk families. It is a tier 2 for us, tier 1 for the legislators, and I know the bill status is 14:17. Yeah, divided report. Anyone know anything about this? Reggie, do you know anything that could help? I'd say I'm throwing it to Reggie, but there's no way Reggie would know like all the details.
Yeah, some bills that came out of these committees, but I can look it up. I mean, that's the best that I can do after the meeting.
Yeah.
But I mean, from what I see, it's divided. Got a fiscal note. Yeah.
Joby, you testified on it.
Yeah, I was just gonna say.
But I can look more into it if folks.
But so did several people. I can see that are recovered. People up in recovery, and recovering from opiates or anything is a struggle. So the more support somebody has, and His Start's an awesome program. It's a great program.
Yeah,
James.
Sorry.
No, James and Joby.
Oh, I was going to say, I mean, I'm not very familiar with this bill, but reading the language of the amended version online, it's got a decent sized fiscal note, although I'm not too worried about including bills that are going to cost money. It's like 7 million in the first year and 15 in the second, I think. To expand Head Start slots, and it gives priority for vacancies to non-school age children who are at risk or who have at-risk families, and that definition of at-risk includes sort of all substance use, sexual or physical abuse, homelessness, mental health disorders, or other condition that affects emotional, mental, or physical well-being of the child. So it's fairly broad in its language, which I think is probably better than just being limited to sort of opioid-affected kids and their families. And those would all seem to be sort of disproportionately BIPOC communities. I'm not 100% sure on that, but.
Bruce?
Joby first, and then I'll hop in.
Thanks.
Yeah, so I testified in support of this bill and strong support of the bill. It's actually quite a significant expansion of Head Start eligibility. It would open it up to, I think the intention was to clear the existing wait list. There's currently a wait list of about 1,000 kids trying to get onto Head Start. That's why it has such a big fiscal note. And it's actually already passed both the House and the Senate. It's sitting on the appropriations table. So that's all I wanted to add.
Thank you. Good bill. Bruce, and then we'll move on.
So I guess what I want to name here, and I'm very uncomfortable bringing this up, but I think it's necessary because I think it ties into 1492, which is we have this idea, and I've noticed this in a lot of our committees, that that opioid related addiction somehow affects people of color more than it does white people, and that, based on everything that I'm aware of, that's just not true. To the contrary, people across the spectrum utilize drugs at the same rate. What is disproportionate is the impact of law enforcement against individuals who are either trafficking or caught for trafficking. And that's what I want to say, caught, not necessarily trafficking, because people who engage in that practice are pretty much the same across the boards. So while I'm a former, I was a clinician. I went away on a drug charge. I am very much in favor of anything that helps the recovery community. However, within the purview of this particular committee and the things that we are going to get behind, I want to make sure that when we're pushing things forward, we're not sending the message that, yes, it is people of color who are involved in that, because that's not the reality. And so I think at least we need to include that as notes. Sounds like great legislation. I'm totally behind it. As for the potential pitfalls behind us pushing that forward, I'm worried that that's sending the wrong message. So I just want to put that out there, and we can get better statistics and digest that as need be.
Thank you,
Thank
Bruce.
you, Bruce.
Yes, thank you. We've had several opiate deaths here this year at Indian Township here in Washington County, and we have several every year. And my son just turned 19 last week, and my son was born, my grandson, 19 years ago, and he's been with me because not because of an opiate problem, but I took him in as his grandfather, and I raised him up until now. He's a fine young man now, but I know the intimate problems children endure and families endure as they're in the recovery process. So I really appreciate anything to do about the opiate epidemic, the opiate pandemic, anything to do with that. I'm in strong personal endorsement and support. So anyway, thank you very much.
Thank you, Vice Chief. And so therein lies, good debate about what will continue to happen in our meetings as we look at these bills. And so I appreciate Bruce for bringing up some of the issues that I hope we go a little bit further into, including what Vice Chief Newell is offering around the impact to families of folks with opioid use disorder. And so I hope that we continue this conversation. It sounds like right now we're keeping it in. Is that right, everyone? Okay, great. We'll do one more because we are almost at time. It is 1421, which was a first tier for everyone across the board. I don't think we have to spend too much time. This is a bail reform bill. It's been amended a number of times, but it's still trying to get at bail reform. Everyone good with keeping it? Okay, great.
Yes.
So, I just noticed I have several different, on one of my computers it says 1222, on the other it says 1227. So
mine says 1228.
Okay. I don't want to go over, but if we had an extra 5 minutes, I'd do more. So we will stop for today. If you are walking through the split, the master list, the Excel, let the record show, Cheryl, that we're at LD 1426. So we will continue in this same format moving forward in analyzing the bills. I don't know if, Carol, I'm going to ask you and maybe Katie and Reggie a process question, which is, would you prefer that we produce a set of minutes or notes or update the status of the bills that we've gone through, which we covered quite a good ground? Or would you prefer for us to schedule a meeting, get through the rest of them before we produce an updated status, an updated list?
Madam Chair, this is Carol. I'll jump in. I don't know. My sense is that Reggie and Katie are going to take the point on producing subsequent documents unless you folks would like me to crunch the numbers in a different way. So I would leave it to them to decide how they want to take the process from here.
Thank you.
Yes, and I would just add that, I think that this meeting and the next, as we were paring down the list, is what's just going to end up in the final report. So unless everybody wants an updated document right now, I don't think we need to produce anything immediately.
Reggie, do you agree?
Yep. I agree. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So,
And it was just one more thing I wanted to add to the conversation. And I hope it's okay. Because I'm sorry. Just because I know that these bills include fiscal notes, the idea came to my mind, and I don't know if this is something that's obviously at the will of the commission, to maybe put in the report to let the appropriations and financial affairs kind of, know that these are the bills that we are prioritizing, looking at a racial, lens, and, we as the permanent commission would support, any funding that will go towards these certain bills. And that's, I just want to bring that up, because there are so many bills you all have gave the thumbs up or perhaps attached to them. So.
okay, thank you very much. So we will, a couple things. We'll pick up at 1426 and go through the rest of the list. Again, this is the first wave, and so we will bring
Am
forth.
I coming through? It seems like maybe a delay.
I'm sorry?
I was wondering if I was coming through. It seems like there's a delay on my end.
Yeah,
with
Reggie, you're breaking up,
Zoom,
but I
so
think we did.
Okay.
I think we did hear your point, and that's been noted for the minutes.
Okay.
Thank you both. So we'll pick up.
Actually, excuse me, Madam Chair. Actually, every time that he was speaking, I did not hear any of it. It was completely wiped out, just to let you know, okay?
Okay.
I'll send that along to you, Cheryl. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Katie.
Thanks for noting that, Cheryl. So we'll pick up at 1426, our next meeting, and then what we'll do is look at our yes pile, answer any questions that were generated today, or James has some information that he might bring back. We're going to go back through the list. We've got to continue to vet it with really a really explicit focus on reducing the racial disparities. And I just want to, I love the conversation that happens as a result of this. I hope it's informative for you all. The other piece we need to do is to talk about bills that are not on these lists that you may want us to debate. I know that I have at least two. Some other folks may have some as well, but our next meeting will finish this list. Then we have to go back through the list, and we still have to talk about bills that are not on this list. It may be helpful, just in terms of process, if you do have bills that are not on these lists that you would like considered, perhaps you send an email to Katie, Reggie, and myself. I'm just keeping Carol, you in the loop just for consistency. That you send a note before our next meeting that says these are the two bills or three bills, whatever it looks like, that you would like reconsidered, so that we can start to generate a list of information associated with those bills that permanent commission members will be prepared to debate. Does anyone have anything else to add? We do need to, I should have paused there. I'm sorry. Anything anyone else wants to add? So Katie, the way that we've set this up, I just want to give a little bit of voice to the fact that the legislature at this point is not showing any signs of going back in, and I'm not I was in an all-day meeting yesterday in Judiciary, and the chair, the Senate chair, Mike Carpenter, articulated this as well. So I'm picking up off of that energy, that there are no signs of us going back into a special session right now, unless perhaps the governor calls us back in due to conflicting views by the Democratic and Republican Party. So I just think we're not under quite that same pressure that we were 2 weeks ago. But Katie, did you want to just mention, we thought we would keep up our meetings twice a week just to get through this and then start to move our attention to report writing? Or what would you suggest at this point?
I dropped off for just a moment. I suspect that was directed at me. Is that?
Yeah.
I'm so sorry. I would suggest that we continue the 2 weeks. As you all know, it still remains unclear if and when a session will reconvene, but I think keeping up the pace to be prepared in the event that it does make sense, as long as you all agree to continue on this Wednesday, Friday, 11 a.m. seemed to work for more people schedule. We did actually meet as a report writing subcommittee once. We don't have time, so we don't have to go into that, but maybe we can start off next meeting with giving a brief overview of the structure we're considering, so that we make sure we have buy-in from everyone. But so we've started that process simultaneously, so that hopefully as your recommendations are finalized, we'll be very close to a final report to share with everybody, to make sure that that's not another extra week after these meetings.
So thank you very much, Katie. So our next week we would be meeting Wednesday and Friday. Because of the work we have to get through, it would be 11 to 12:30 for both days. I think this week we only had 11 to 12 on Wednesday. Understand that some folks will not be able to attend, join late, leave early. But for right now, we'll keep our meetings 11 to 12:30 next Wednesday and next Friday. And I think that's it, unless folks have another question, missing information. I do want to just recognize that Representative Craig Hickman, although he wasn't able to participate in the meeting, he did join the line and he was listening in. He's managing more than one thing at the moment, but want to appreciate Representative Hickman for being with us today and for all the work that he's doing to help keep this, all of this moving forward. So thank you, Representative Hickman. And once again, just extraordinary thanks and gratitude to Carol Kelly, to our staff, Katie and Reggie and Megan, who is on vacation this week, but is here with us in spirit and doing quite a bit of work, and Cheryl Davis for helping us out each and every meeting. So with that, I hope you all have a great weekend. And if you need anything, be in touch. Otherwise, we'll get back together next Wednesday. And thank you for all your work today.
Thank you all. See you soon.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.